Humans 2.0. A gene enhancement program, promoted by the government as the new bioarmor for the 21st century. Stronger immunity, faster reflexes, superior stress tolerance. In the gleaming glass buildings where the morning light streamed through the transparent walls. The first to join the upgrade ranks saw only sleek advertising screens and promises of a safer, healthier, and smarter future. On paper, it's the most advanced gene technology humanity has ever created. In reality, what they put into their bodies doesn't entirely belong to Earth. In sterile clinics, robotic arms glide smoothly across the ceiling, preparing syringes filled with new generation synthetic vectors. Doctors explain the DNA segments designed to boost immunity, reprogram the nervous system, and optimize hormones. The participants nodded, signed their names, lay down on the chairs, and looked up at the reassuring screens displaying the safety curves. They didn't see, in that endless stream of genetic code, a strange pattern, a microbial structure, first found on a space mission that had been buried in classified records for decades. Initially, Humans 2.0 is a perfect PR story. A television report aired during prime time showed soldiers, firefighters, and medical personnel embracing a new future, running faster, enduring better, and recovering from injuries more quickly. In the photo shoots on the hospital rooftop, under the morning sun, they stood in a straight line, the veins under their skin barely gleaming with a pale light. Enough to look high-tech, not enough to evoke fear. In the high-rise conference rooms, profit calculations, global expansion maps, defense, healthcare, and civilian contract packages piled up like guarantee. This program will never stop, but beneath the surface of the numbers, something else began to happen. In the private dormitory on campus, when the lights were out and everyone seemed to be asleep, infrared cameras captured a strange phenomenon. The participants turned over at the same time, sat up at the same time, and their breathing synchronized into a perfect wave. Other nights, they lay motionless, eyes half open, the blood vessels under their skin pulsing at a rhythm that no doctor could define. In the MRI scans, their brain structures began to change, not with obvious lesions, but in new connecting branches, strange networks interwoven into the existing nervous system, resembling both parasites and sentients outside. In the small apartments in the middle of the city, families began to notice the first anomalies. They're not just healthier, they're calmer. They woke up at the same time, even though they didn't set an alarm. They recounted the same dream, strange skies, constellations not found on any commercial astronomical map. In neurology clinics, curious doctors listen intently, draw diagrams of bright spots on the screen, then silently open a browser to check how could these dreams accidentally match the sky data obtained from military observatories. Inside the building, biological laboratories began to delve deeper. Under high-resolution microscopes and 3D tissue scanners, what lies between human cells no longer resembles any familiar chain of viruses or bacteria. These thin branching fibers with complex fractal patterns weave into blood vessels, wrap around nerve cells, respond to stress hormones and electrical signals like a living sensor system. With each attempt to break or cut it off, it doesn't die. It restructures, takes detours, and creates a new, more optimized network. Instead of simply being an enhancing agent, it behaves like a second nervous system. The first signs of the truth leaking out didn't come from the boardroom, but from a small visual product. In the control room of a television station, an editor repeatedly plays a Humans 2 commercial, zeroed to adjust the color. In a few frames, the light seems to be sliding in the wrong direction, and the light veins under the skin connect to form a pattern so precise it couldn't be random. At a bar near the hospital district, a young doctor pushed a small storage device across the table, his eyes darting around in fear. In a makeshift motel room, data appeared on the walls, hormone maps, heart rates, neural activity, all beginning to synchronize between people who had never met. The journalist, the character the audience follows throughout the film, doesn't stay on the sidelines for long. He received the record, the photograph, the confession. He pinned up photos of the upgrade volunteers on the board, connecting them to a forgotten space mission, to heavily redacted reports. and then to news about an unidentified biological object that had fallen to Earth in the past. For him, the story was no longer just risky gene technology, it was the trace of an intelligence, not of human origin, waiting in cold storage long before anyone had even heard of the name Humans 2. Zero. Meanwhile, the program is still being normalized. They appear in children's hospitals, play with children, proving that they are still just like everyone else. They sat in the front row at community meetings in the church, where residents questioned the authorities about the alien DNA rumors. They smiled, answered calmly, and offered carefully prepared statements. But the cameras recorded something else, as emotions in the room rose. The light patterns on their skin synchronized, brightening and dimming together, as if one person were breathing for the entire group between the concrete layers deep underground. The ethics committee and security panels debated phrases never used in official documents, exogenous signatures, non-terrestrial agents in closed screening rooms. They rewatched the old blurry footage of a test tube vibrating as it first came into contact with human cells. They opened buried reports discussing intelligence spores obtained from a returning probe. Each new question posed is accompanied by another, more weighty one. Did they truly control this, or were they just allowing it to choose a more favorable living environment? Society reacted the way it always reacts to revealed secrets, with division. In cities, people took to the streets with banners denouncing the government's experimentation with alien genes on its citizens. In the halls of Congress, tense hearings revolved around the question of whether the program violated every medical ethical standard ever set. Corporations are trying to stay calm, talking about opportunities for healing, extending lifespan, and competing with other countries. But in internal maps, they also saw what scientists had seen. This network was spreading not just through bloodlines, but through political decisions, budgets, and ambition. At the clinical front lines, change becomes undeniable. Violent seizures, heart stopping according to old standard charts, but then restarting at a completely different rhythm. The negative pressure isolation rooms are filled with humans 2.0 patients, whose subcutaneous structures seem to be rearranging themselves, as if holding a silent dialogue with something humans haven't yet measured. In the operating room, the efforts to remove the infected tissue ended with a cold truth. All the cuts were covered by new, adapted, and denser networks at the same time. The system began to react, not from the human side, but from the network itself. In data centers, records show that treatment consent orders were modified. Warning flags were lowered, and access was redistributed, not by the visible hand of a hacker in the cameras, but by automated processes that something, had manipulated from within. In local hospitals, doctors were suddenly locked out of patient records, while medication was dispensed precisely to the wards with the most participants in human 2.0. System errors are reported as technical glitches, but when pieced together, they tell a different story. The network is self-organizing. The signs in real life are also gradually becoming apparent. In the crowded subway, those who had upgraded stood still amidst the swaying crowd, their breathing and heart rates unusually synchronized. On the children's playground, a child fell, cried inconsolably, then fell silent when a dim right hand touched their shoulder and their vital signs stabilized without medication. On the blocked streets, they stood calmly as armored vehicles rolled past. People were fearful and chaotic, but within them a new order was forming, not based on laws, but on biological signals. Journalists, scientists disagree, and a few conscientious officials are still burdened by the effort to get ahead. They held secret meetings in empty halls, dug up underground archives, and tried to design an antidote, but each reversed experiment showed the same pattern. Whatever touched the network was reabsorbed, as if they were trying to erase a sentence in a book that rewrites itself. In some places, voluntary operators assist with rescue efforts, using their own transformed bodies to stabilize patients in field hospitals, a testament that what's inside them isn't purely destructive. While the world debates, the network extends beyond human borders. Radio telescopes on a remote mountaintop picked up a weak repetitive signal that strangely matched the biological rhythms of test subjects around the world. The global map began to glow with clusters of points where the program had taken root. In an empty stadium, they were lined up for mass testing, and from above, their positions appeared as a symbol that only the intelligence that sent the initial spores could understand. For viewers, for the first time, the scale of the problem became tangible. This was no longer a misguided experiment, but a process coming full circle. At the highest level, the tightly sealed strategic rooms were pushed to a decision that no one had ever been trained to make. Were they facing a disease or a new form of intelligent life? The scenarios displayed on the screen were: eliminate all those who had upgraded and bet that the network would die with them, or accept the existence of humans 2.0 as a new evolutionary layer, with the risk that humanity, as they knew it, would become a minority or disappear. Each option carries the shadow of the word extinction, differing only in the question, whose extinction? In intensive care units, those decisions are no longer abstract. A key patient, a victim of a failed reversal attempt, lies on the brink of life and death. The foreign filament network in his body contracted, then expanded, as if considering. Outside the glass, the others stood silently, the light veins on their skin merging with the rhythm on the screen, as if waiting for a verdict, not from the doctor, but from the very structure they had invited in. And then, the world ... continued after the lockdown order. People took to the streets, trying to resume their old habits, buying coffee, going to work, and taking their children to school. Amidst that crowd, the Humans 2.0 members walked by, looking more ordinary than ever. There were no explosions, no spectacular flashes of light, only the gentle synchronicity of their heartbeats as they passed each other, the eyes reflecting networks that ordinary people couldn't see. On satellite maps, the bright clusters of the network continued to spread gradually, becoming more complex and sophisticated. In the small room where the film's narrator recorded the final question, the screen behind him showed faces that had previously participated in the program, calm, clear, but unpredictable. He recounted the story not in the voice of a hero, but in the voice of a witness. Humans opened the door, thinking they were controlling a technology, when in reality, they were inviting another intelligence into their bodies. From that point on, the boundary between human and parasite became much less distinct from outside the orbit. If someone were looking down, they wouldn't see individual entities anymore, but a glowing network encompassing the countenance, a new brain learning to think with millions of bodies. Humans once believed they would be the final observers, recording everything before the curtain fell. But as Humans 2.0 gradually perfected, the question lingered, unanswerable by anyone. When the transformation process ends, will there be anyone left completely human as before, to witness what their species has become?